You're listening to episode 66 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'll be sharing with you my exact strategy for actually accomplishing your goals in 2021. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always, and this is officially my first podcast episode that I am recording in 2021. Now, I know that 2020 was a crazy year for the world in general, whether you had a good year or a bad year. I know that we all were affected by everything that happened in our nation and around the world in 2020. So even though I personally had some really great things happen in my life last year, I was still not too sad to say goodbye to 2020 and just excited to hopefully see some changes in the world around us in 2021 now that we are hopefully on the other side of the things that we've dealt with in 2020, including COVID and the election and all these things that happened for those of us living in the United States. So I'm hoping that 2021 will be a little bit more normal. We'll see what happens. I'm trying to stay adaptable and flexible no matter what happens in the world around me, but I'm anticipating some exciting things in my own personal life in 2021. So I wanted to talk a little bit with you today about New Year's resolutions and how to actually accomplish your goals in 2021. Now, the truth is, I don't really do New Year's resolutions anymore. I used to set goals around my fitness, primarily when I was in college, which probably was a little bit disordered when it was coming down to wanting to lose weight or get a six-pack or whatever kind of body goals that I had. I definitely don't do that anymore, and it's just not something I really honestly care about anymore as far as like looking a certain way or reaching certain fitness goals. It's just not really a priority for me in my life anymore. Now that I'm in my 30s, I feel like I have a better grasp on the things that are really important to me, and looking a certain way in a bathing suit is no longer a priority for me. So I also, in the past, would set revenue goals when I was first starting my business. And not that there's anything wrong with having revenue goals. I still have revenue goals annually in my business, but I honestly don't really consider them resolutions. They're just what I would call key performance indicators. And they're also called KPIs, which is the short for key performance indicators. Tracking my revenue is something that it's definitely on my radar, and I have goals for revenue. I have some ideas about where that revenue will come from, but it's not really a big main goal of mine to necessarily hit a certain amount of revenue for 2021. I use that information to help me understand how my business is growing, if it's moving in the right direction from a profit perspective. Obviously, I want to make sure that I can pay myself as well as my team members, so bringing in revenue is a big part of running a business. So I definitely pay attention to my revenue. And I definitely have goals for 2021 when it comes to my revenue, but it's not something I would consider a New Year's resolution anymore, the way that I used to think about it when I had first started my business back in 2014. Now, as an aside, if you are a nutrition business owner and you want to set some goals for your revenue, or you want to figure out what your revenue goal should even be based on your life goals or the way you want to run your business, then I have a free guide for you to help you determine your pricing as well as set your revenue goals both on a monthly and an annual perspective if you're a business owner. So you can grab that free guide at lauraschoenfeld.com. Now notice I did not say lauraschoenfeldrd.com. I said lauraschoenfeld.com. Yes, I do have another website now, and that's where all my business coaching stuff is currently located. I may be adding more to the Laura Schoenfeld RD website soon, hopefully. But for now, everything that you would want to learn about my business coaching is over at lauraschoenfeld.com. But like I said, if you want to set some revenue goals for 2021 and you're a nutrition business owner, then that free guide is going to help you do just that. So, like I said, I don't really do New Year's resolutions anymore. And at this stage of my life and my business development, most of my goals and habits are really just based on two main things. The first and probably the most important thing is a vision of the person that I want to be and the life I want to live. Now, that vision can change, and it does change, and it's not something that I set when I turned 30 and now it's never been anything different since then. My business has changed a ton. My lifestyle has changed a ton. Even just having gotten married and possibly wanting to start a family, there's a lot of things that are different in my personal life. And even after 2020, just all the changes that happen in the world, learning how to adapt to those and really reprioritize my life has changed my vision for myself pretty substantially in the last few years. But that vision's really based on my core values as a person and a business owner, which again, those can change, but they're a lot more stable because things like integrity and freedom and fun and excellence, those core values that I have as a person and a business owner, they're probably not going to change a lot, if at all, over the course of my life. All of that said, I use my core values and I use my vision of who I want to be and what the lifestyle that I want to live is and why I want to have a business in the first place. Because sometimes I think we entrepreneurs get so caught up in running the business that we stop remembering what the reason we started the business in the first place is. So just being really clear about the purpose of the business is something that's very important to identifying the vision. But by identifying that vision, I'm able to think more strategically about the path it will require for me to get there and the specific actions that I need to take that will move me along that path. Strategic thinking around our goals is so important because it's not enough to just say, I want to make 100K in my business, or I want to run a marathon or something like that. Like that's a good place to start. And that is something that can set the barometer for the kind of results that we want in our life or in our business, but it's not something that's going to give us a lot of individual day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month direction. So we'll talk about that in a minute as far as actual action steps to take, but setting that vision is really important first for a couple of reasons. Parts of my vision, a lot of it doesn't just include business. In fact, most of my vision for my life is not centered around my business. It's centered around the things that are most valuable to me. For me, that includes things like spending time with my friends, traveling with my husband when we're allowed to again, maybe starting a family or kind of contemplating that at this stage of the game. All of these things all require me to create a business that doesn't just solely rely on me. So I always want to keep that core element of my vision very at the front, because if it's not at the front, then it's really easy for me to get way wrapped up in the business and the work that I'm doing, and I'll forget to make time for my friends or plan trips with my husband, or I'll create a business that requires me to work so much that the idea of having kids is like terrifying. So for me, that vision, including my personal vision, which again is really more important than my business vision, having that vision set allows me to then create goals that align with that vision. Many of my goals for 2021 are going to revolve around simplifying and systematizing my business so that way I can make more space for my personal life, responsibilities, and priorities. So, like I said, if I don't make space for that, if I don't put that in my calendar or create a business that allows for that space, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with work to do and to allow my calendar to get out of control and to just get to a place where my business is running my life. So I don't want that. If you're a business owner, I assume you don't want that. And even if you're not a business owner, it's just really important to understand what your core priorities are and how your day-to-day actions are actually moving you towards or away from that priority or that overall vision for your life. Now, as much as I have these goals for simplifying my business and systematizing things and hitting certain revenue goals and making space for different things that I want to do in my personal life, the fact is that I don't have control over all of those outcomes. I can plan for it, I can vision it, I can come up with the individual steps I'm going to take to be able to get there, but I'm really not in control of those outcomes. So there is a little bit of a detachment from those goals that I have when it comes to my emotions around those goals. Now, I've learned, especially in 2020, that I can't predict or control the future. I think we all learned that in some way, shape, or form. And so the goal isn't to have a death grip on the result. It's also not to have a death grip on the how. Because if I think about 2020, I went into 2020 having a completely different idea of how that year was going to go and the results I was going to get than what actually ended up happening. Now, for me, the things that happened in my business and the goals I had set, I actually far exceeded those things that I had originally thought about in January. But if you had asked me last January if I knew what was going to happen in June of 2020 or December of 2020, I would have told you something totally different. So when I set these goals and when I have this vision for my life, one, I know that vision can change. And I mentioned that before, that, there's different priorities that come up, different things that change in the world, things that affect whether or not that vision can really come to fruition on your own timing. Like I said, traveling with my husband, I would love to do that ASAP, but it's not really something we can do right now because of COVID. So I'm not putting that out of my vision, but it's something that I'm less thinking about for the first half of 2021. But I'm also letting go of that tight grip on how I get to this vision. Again, things like having time with my friends, starting a family, like I know that stuff is not 100% in my control. I can't control my friends' schedules. I can't control whether or not I get pregnant on the timing that we think is the right timing. All of that stuff is out of my control. So I really try not to take this super tight grip on how I'm going to get to the goals that I have and to the vision that I have. Same thing in my business. I have ideas for what I would like to accomplish in my business. I have things that I have promised to my clients. So of course I'm going to deliver those things that I've promised. But when it comes to things like revenue goals or product development or anything like that, even if I have some ideas about what I'd like to accomplish, I really try to have a loose grip on the exact how of how I'm going to get there, because being adaptable is something that's really important for entrepreneurship and for being able to take the curveballs that life throws at you, especially things like 2020, but hopefully 2021 will not be quite as much of a curveball as 2020. But just being able to really adapt to our circumstances is so important, whether we're an entrepreneur or not. So my feeling is I want to have a vision for what I want to accomplish, but I'm not going to be emotionally attached to the specifics of that vision, and I'm not going to be attached to the exact action steps that are required to get there, because I know that anything could happen and I want to stay open to different opportunities and different possibilities that come up. Now, all of that said, with all of that flexibility in there, I will say that I still have a good amount of strategic planning that I do. And we'll talk in a minute about how to do that strategic planning. But the fact is that having that vision and being really loose about how you're going to get there doesn't always work out when it comes to actually accomplishing your goals. You do want to have some level of action steps that have been established, and that is something that can be relatively easily accomplished as long as you think about it in the right way. So like I said, we'll get into that in a minute, but I did want to mention the second thing that affects the kind of goals that I set for myself, whether that's for my personal life or for my business. I do tend to set way more goals for my business, probably just because I'm way more ambitious when it comes to my business than my personal life, but it is something that will work for personal goals as well. So the second thing I keep in mind when I'm setting these goals is I like to think about what would I be able to reasonably accomplish in a single quarter, not in a year, but a quarter, which is 3 months. I want to be able to accomplish these goals within a quarter without giving up on the things that are most important to me. Because the truth is that I could work 100-hour weeks and make a ton of progress in my business, but working 100-hour weeks is not aligned with that vision that I have for my life. I mentioned spending time with friends, my husband. I have hobbies that I enjoy. I like being active. I have a dog that I like walking. So working 100-hour weeks is not aligned with the kind of life that I want to live. Ideally, I would like to work less than 30 hours a week, and that amount of hours per week may change if I have kids. I don't know. Maybe I'll want to work all the time because I'll be like sick of being around my kids, or maybe I will surprise myself and love being a mom and want to not work that much. So for now, before I have kids, I want to get to a place where I could work less than 30 hours a week and still have my business be running the way I want it to run. And so I keep that in mind when I think about the goals that I set for my individual quarters. I like to focus on quarters because for me, they're a lot more tangible and it's easier to identify what I believe is doable in 90 days rather than when I think about 365 days. 90 days feels a lot more, I feel like I can see it more and I can plan it more and I can think through like how long are things going to take and what's reasonable to accomplish in 90 days. When I think about what can I accomplish by December 31st, 2021, I honestly couldn't tell you. I really have no idea. And it's to try to think through that is just way more stressful and way more difficult than is really worth it. So that's why I like to plan my goals based on quarters. Now, you might be different. Maybe you like to do it by month, or maybe you do like to do it for a year. But I personally have a really hard time thinking out a year into the future. So I would rather think about quarters and actually feel like I have a grip on what's possible to accomplish in 90 days and not just have this like open-ended, well, here's what I want to do, but I have no idea how long it's going to take. And I have no idea if I can get it done in a year. Now, even this year, I'm doing what I can to plan out the year with important dates and deliverables for my mastermind and my other coaching programs. I have a retreat that I'm organizing for March. I also have workshops that I'm doing on a quarterly basis for one of my coaching programs. So I do need to actually plan out my year. It's not like I'm completely just have no idea what's happening after April 1st. But when it comes to my goals and the granular details of action steps, I'm really focusing on that 90-day quarter and what I can accomplish in those 90 days. So if that sounds like something that would be helpful for you, I want to give you a couple of tips on how to plan your quarter so that you can actually accomplish the goals that you set for yourself. Because like I said, you want to have that vision. You want to have an idea of what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your business to look like? What do you want your health to look like? Whatever kind of goals you have for those areas of your life, what do you want that to look like from a vision perspective? And then what is reasonably possible to accomplish in the next 90 days that would move you towards that vision? So once you have that, then I want you to be thinking about your individual quarter. So the date that this is coming out is in January 2021. So we're in quarter one of 2021. And so I want you to be thinking about what do you feel that you could accomplish in quarter one of this year, which means between now and the end of March. I would suggest thinking about at most 3 total projects. Honestly, you could pick one project that you want to work on that you feel could be reasonably completed in 90 days. The less, the better. Honestly, if you get above 3 projects, and that includes personal projects, so just keep that in mind. But if you get beyond 3 total projects for a quarter, either the projects are not that important, that they don't take that long to accomplish and they're not really that big of a goal, or they're just going to completely overwhelm you in that quarter and make it so that you're just doing a ton of stuff, running around like a chicken with your head cut off. It's just not worth it. So like I said, I would start with 1 to 3 total projects. If you're new to quarterly planning, honestly, I would keep it no more than 2. If you're a little bit more seasoned, or maybe there's some projects that are more of a repeat, like what I'm working on this quarter, then you might be able to fit in a little bit more than 2. But I would really try to start with 1 or 2 if you're new to quarterly planning. For me, my main quarter one goal is to update my Nutrition Business Accelerator group program and then relaunch it. So I had mentioned a second ago that repeating a project is something that takes less time than starting a project from scratch. If you've ever launched something, if you are an entrepreneur and you've ever gone from scratch, creating a program and then selling it, you would know that the first time you do all of that stuff, there's a lot more work involved than if you're repeating that process later. So I've already launched NBA twice. I've run it twice. This is going to be my third time. And it doesn't mean it's not going to take work, but it means that a lot of the stuff that would have gone into an initial launch has already been done. And there's a lot of rinse and repeating that I can do for that goal. So like I said, one of my core goals is to relaunch my Nutrition Business Accelerator program. And pretty much I'm spending a good chunk of quarter one working on that. So once you've identified the project or projects that you want to work on in that quarter, then you want to set a date that you want to accomplish that task by. So as an example, for me, my Nutrition Business Accelerator program, I want to start that in March. And so I'm going to work backwards from there. Once I figure out the date that I want that program to go, then all of the tasks that need to be done to get it off the ground can be done in January and February, essentially. So when we have that date set, and again, it could be anything. If it's like a health goal that you have that you want to see some results in by the end of March, then that's the date that you set for when you want to accomplish that goal by. Now, once you have the date set, like I said, it's really a working backwards type of process. You want to identify all of the smaller steps that need to be done to accomplish that task. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty details. As an example, for my NBA relaunch, I have to do things like re-record the course videos. I have to update my sales page. We're going to be collecting testimonials from the last round of the program that I ran. I need to write email invitations. There's a lot of things that I need to do to make sure that we're all ready to go in February for that launch. And so those are smaller tasks. Some of that might just take a couple minutes. I mean, writing an email for me is probably maybe 30 minutes to write that email, especially if I already have one from the last round that I could reuse. So there's a lot of really small tasks that need to happen for that launch to come together completely. And I want to make sure I've brain dumped every single little step that needs to be taken to be able to accomplish that goal. Now, once you have all of the things that need to be done, you want to give each of them due dates, because the smaller tasks are things that you can actually put into your calendar to take action on and make it so that you're moving towards accomplishing that big project that you've set the goal for the quarter, and make sure that you're not rushing to get everything done at the last minute. So I like to use programs like Asana or Trello for setting these due dates. Asana is the project management board that I use for my business. I used to use Trello. I don't use Trello anymore because it's not as powerful as Asana, but Asana is a great one. Monday.com is another option. ClickUp is another option. There's a lot of different project management boards that you can use to get those due dates set and actually have a calendar where you can see the tasks that you need to do and when you want to have them done by. Trello is a free option. So if you're new to business or you're just using it for your personal life, I would definitely recommend checking out Trello as an option for creating these project boards and creating due dates around the individual tasks. It's kind of like a little checklist essentially that you can create. And then when you assign them due dates, you'll see them actually get populated into a calendar, which is really cool. Now, if you're old school, you can also use a notebook or a pen and pencil here if you want to write these things down for yourself and just keep them on your desk. That's fine. I don't love that because I like having everything on my calendar and my computer, and I like having reminders that get sent to me that tasks are due. So that's why I like using those virtual project management boards. But if you're really just wanting to keep it old school and write it down on paper, then just make sure that you're checking that paper or that notebook regularly. You don't want to leave it on your desk and come back to it a month later and realize you missed like 3 deadlines that you had set for yourself. So you can use a notebook. You can write like a simple checklist if you'd like. But like I said, I like to use the virtual project management boards to just organize things better and to get reminders when things are due. Now, if you're a business owner, or I mean, really you could do this with anything, but when you're a business owner, a lot of times you have to outsource certain tasks. So if you have somebody else that's expected to do a certain task that allows you to complete that project, then make sure you're assigning those tasks to those people. For example, I'm having my assistant help with collecting the testimonials from the last round of NBA, and I've hired someone to help me run ads for the program. I'm not an ads expert, so I realized that there's a lot of value to hiring somebody for that. And so even though I have ads as part of the launch process and the goal for having that launch, I know that my ads guy is going to actually run those. So I need to make sure that he's kept in the loop for due dates. Now, if you're going to hire someone, make sure that you're providing them reasonable due dates for their part. I am notorious for waiting until the very last minute to hire someone, and I can tell you from personal experience that it's always better when you hire someone well in advance of when you need the work done. So whether that is Facebook ads for your launch, or that's somebody coming to paint your house because you're having guests come or something like that, making sure that you're getting in touch with them soon enough that you're not scrambling to get the thing done before the due date is really, really important. So that's why when you do this process of the goal setting and the individual task assignment, you can make sure that any task that another person needs to get done is assigned to them, and that you give them ample time to get that work done and a reasonable due date that they're not like rushing like crazy to get it done. So after you've assigned all the tasks, then really it's just time to focus on those individual tasks and their due dates and to chip away at the project until it's done. I literally, for my launch, have this giant checklist of all the things that need to get done that are either assigned to me, assigned to my assistant, assigned to a contractor, and we have due dates for all of them. And literally, I just go through that checklist and make sure things are getting done. I would not be able to remember all of that stuff if it was not in a project management board like Asana. And so if you're trying to run anything more complicated like a launch for your business, you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping things organized and that you're able to easily see when things have been completed. So that's pretty much it. That's the nutshell version of the exact process I'm using to plan out Q1 of 2021. In fact, I kind of laugh. I say my team, it was my assistant and my husband this morning in my office at my house as I was writing on the whiteboard, just writing out all the things that need to be done for the different things we have planned for Q1. The reason my husband was involved is because he's dabbling in some of the business stuff that I'm doing and learning from me to potentially do some of his own work in that online entrepreneurial space. I think I've maybe successfully convinced him to at least consider it as a career path rather than it just being this like thing that his crazy wife does. But it is something that he was sitting in on that meeting and helping me think through anything that might need to be done for the launch. So now I have this whiteboard with all these different items on it, and my assistant is going to be adding those items to our Asana checklist so that we can check them off as the quarter goes on. Now, this isn't all I'm doing. These quarterly projects are not the only thing I spend my time doing. I also have regular important tasks like recording this podcast, coaching my clients. I have some workshops and retreats that I've scheduled for the rest of the year that need to be done. So there's a lot of other things that are happening for the rest of 2021 that are not things we talked about planning this morning during our planning meeting. But I have made sure to get those on the calendar ahead of time so that when we get to planning out Q2, we're going to be able to look at, okay, we have this thing planned for June and we have this thing planned for October and all the things that we've planned, making sure that we're getting the things done that need to be done so that we're not scrambling to finish things or totally missing deadlines and not accomplishing our goals. So that's what I've done for 2021. I've also scheduled time off. I've scheduled breaks into my year to make sure I'm taking that time off because I work way more than I should and I stink at taking time off. I just really love working. It's something that I just enjoy. And so I actually have to schedule breaks into my calendar to make sure that nothing gets scheduled that day. And that way I can take time off. But that means that 2021 is the Q1 is fully scheduled as far as the work that we're working on. And then the rest of the quarters 2 through 4 are loosely scheduled. So that way I can make sure that all my big projects are getting done. And when we redo this process in April, we'll make sure we're setting individual task deadlines and all of that for our goals. So That was my little overview of how to reach your goals, whether they're in business or your personal life in 2021, to have a vision for what you want to accomplish for your life, whether that's your business or your personal life, to break that vision down into 90-day projects that you can work on and actually take action towards, and then to break those 90-day projects into smaller tasks that are things that you can check off your list to say that you did them and really schedule them into your quarter so that way you make sure that they're getting done. So there you have it. Now, I would love to hear from you. What is your main goal for Q1 after you've gone through this process? What project are you working on if you own a business, or what are your goals as a personal life if you don't run a business? I just want to hear from you. So DM me on Instagram. That's one of my favorite ways to connect with people, is through Instagram. And let me know what you thought of this podcast and what your goals are for Q1. And that way I can cheer you on as you're working towards them. So I hope that this podcast was valuable. I look forward to seeing you guys here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura here again. Thank you so much for listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Your time is your most precious resource, and I'm so grateful that you choose to spend some of it with me. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast and want to continue supporting my work on this show, I would very much appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes. By leaving a 5-star review, you'll help others find the show and help me spread my message to a larger audience. You can go to fedandfearless.com/review to find a button that'll take you right to iTunes to leave your review. And I have a special gift for you as a thank you for helping me share the podcast. Once you leave your review, send a screenshot of the review to hello@lauraschoenfeldrd.com. Or you can DM it to me on Instagram @lauraschoenfeldrd. Once you do, I'll share a free copy of my Overcoming Undereating ebook. Then share a favorite podcast episode in your Instagram stories and tag me @lauraschoenfeldrd. And I'll also give you a free copy of my 14-day calorie challenge recipe guide. Together, these bonuses are worth $44 and will help you become Fed and Fearless. And you'll get them absolutely free for just helping me grow the podcast. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next week for the latest episode.